On the brink of their greatest adventure, our hunters set their sights on the Dark Continent, a land of mystery and danger. What awaits them beyond the edge of the world? Let's dive into its introduction in HunterXHunter. Beans bursts into the Zodiac's conference room, his voice filled with urgency, just as Chetel is about to deliver an important announcement. The Zodiacs exchange glances, speculating that she might be resigning as chairman. However, Chowdhull swiftly reassures them before turning their attention to Beans, who insists on addressing a pressing matter. He presents a video featuring King Nasubi Hui-Guo-Ru of the Kukin Empire. In the footage, Nasubi makes a bold declaration about carrying the dreams of all humanity on their backs, as he announces that the voyage to the Dark Continent will commence from Kukin Empire. The Zodiacs are visibly taken aback, except for Kanzai, who remains clueless about both the Dark Continent and the Kukin monarch. Gel steps in to clarify. The Dark Continent is an uncharted and perilous land, absent from conventional world maps, where unknown human civilizations and mystical creatures reside. Nizaistim elaborates, explaining that every past attempt to explore it has resulted in catastrophe. Consequently, 200 years ago, the world's 5 leading nations, collectively known as the V5, established a treaty prohibiting further expeditions. Chetel adds that Kukin, having become a recognized nation only 30 years ago, may not have been bound by the original agreement. As the discussion unfolds, Beans interrupts again, this time with an even more shocking revelation. The video continues, showing Nasubi introducing the leader of the expedition to the Dark Continent, Isaac Netero, the former chairman of the Hunter Association. But to everyone's astonishment, Nasubi clarifies that the man they have enlisted is not the late chairman himself, but his son, Beyond Netero. The Zodiacs are stunned, unaware that Netero had any children. Garrel suggests verifying the claim, but before they can deliberate further, Beyond begins his speech. His striking resemblance to Isaac Netero immediately convinces several Zodiacs of his legitimacy. With confidence, Beyond promises to oversee the expedition and ensure equal opportunity for all willing participants. He extends an open invitation to the world, urging them to journey to Kukin Empire and venture into the unknown. The weight of his words leaves the room in palpable tension as the video ends. Beans then discloses a crucial piece of information. Before his passing, Chairman Netero entrusted him with 2 DVDs, instructing that the second be shown to all Zodiac members should anyone claim to be his offspring. However, with Jin and Periston absent, the decision falls to Chetel. Without hesitation, she declares that their presence is unnecessary, as both have resigned from the Zodiacs. Moreover, she reveals that the V5 has already issued them a critical mission, one that leaves no room for hesitation, to hunt down Beyond Netero. Meanwhile, across the world, people rally behind Beyond Netero, captivated by his vision of a new frontier. Undeterred by the V5's prohibitions, he delivers a rousing speech alongside his 10 most trusted followers, Periston among them, expressing his unwavering resolve to explore the Dark Continent without restriction. His ambition is clear, to set foot on a land unseen by humanity, no matter the cost. The director of the International Permit Agency, IPA, accompanied by the newly appointed Deputy Secretary Steiner, both representatives of the V5, walks through a heavily fortified corridor. As they move toward a secure elevator, they discuss the IPA's role in overseeing the upcoming expedition to the Dark Continent. The director cryptically remarks that the gatekeeper of the New World despises ill-mannered visitors. He warns that if negotiations with the Kukin Empire fail, it could lead to the opening of Pandora's box. Confused, Steiner questions whether the statement is meant metaphorically. The elevator doors open, and the director leads Steiner into the depths of the IPA's secret basement, a place steeped in darkness and grim history. The scene before them is horrifying. Countless human corpses, their forms grotesquely twisted, the remnants of past attempts to venture into the Dark Continent. The director solemnly explains that these are not travelers who reach the Dark Continent, but victims found within the known world, having unknowingly brought back its horrors. Handing Steiner an ancient book titled Journey to the New World, the director explains its significance. Once dismissed as mere fiction, the book is now regarded as a legendary record chronicling expeditions from centuries past. He orders Steiner to study every detail and discern the risks of setting foot into the unknown. As they proceed through the eerie basement, a sudden impact against reinforced glass startles Steiner. Behind the barrier stands a grotesque, inhuman figure, the only survivor among those who returned from the Dark Continent. The director explains that this entity was once a hunter, but exposure to a mysterious virus rendered him something beyond human. The creature has existed without sustenance for 50 years, a living testament to the perils of the Dark Continent. Every past expedition has resulted in disaster, with humanity retreating in fear, only to bring calamities back with them. Later, Steiner returns home and begins his assigned reading. However, as he delves into the book's contents, particularly its account of the 5 threats brought back from the Dark Continent, an overwhelming sense of dread grips him. Meanwhile, the Zodiacs gather to watch the second DVD left behind by former chairman Netero. In the recording, Netero reveals that his son, Beyond Netero, had already made an unauthorized voyage to the Dark Continent, returning with unknown threats. As a result, he strictly forbade both Beyond and the Hunter Association from further exploration until after his death. However, Nefantro expresses a personal wish for the Hunter Association to venture into the Dark Continent before Beyond, but stresses that this is a request, not a command. Shuttle accepts the mission but insists that no other hunters outside the Zodiacs should be involved. This sparks a heated debate among the group. Sayu and Kanzai object to the pursuit of Beyond, arguing that it gives the Hunter Association an unfair advantage in the race to the Dark Continent. Others counter that Kaseiken will gain a massive head start unless they act decisively. The discussion shifts to Jin Freaks, the only known hunter with the ambition and capability to reach the Dark Continent. Jal speculates that if Ganging joins their side, the playing field will be leveled. If not, Kujkin will dominate the expedition. As tensions rise, Bean suddenly receives an unexpected call. To the Zodiac's astonishment, the caller is none other than Beyond Netero himself. Without hesitation, he appears before them and, with a confident smirk, instructs them to contact the V5. His message is clear. Tell them you have captured Beyond Netero. Beyond Netero sits confined in a cell, his expression calm yet unwavering, as Chela Yorkshire interrogates him, while the rest of the Zodiacs observe in silence. Unshaken by his captivity, Beyond confidently predicts that the Zodiacs will ultimately release him and join him on his expedition to the Dark Continent. Cheadle dismisses his claim as pure delusion, asserting that their positions are clear. Beyond is on the offensive, while the Zodiacs remain on the defensive. To maintain transparency and accountability, she declares that their conversation will be recorded. Meanwhile, at the International Permit Agency, IPA, Deputy Secretary Steiner and the V5 representatives analyze records of previous attempts to reach the Dark Continent. The data is staggering. 149 expeditions have been launched, yet only 5 succeeded in landing. Among those, only 28 people survived, one of whom was Beyond Netero. Even more chilling is the fact that out of those 28, only 3 managed to reintegrate into normal society. The discussion shifts to the mysterious guides, an enigmatic race known as the gatekeepers of the Dark Continent, who control access to the uncharted land. When asked if the 5 threats brought back from past voyages have been well documented, the officials confirm that they have. Steiner then proposes a bold strategy. V5 should absorb Kakin into their ranks, forming a new entity, the V6. Back in the Zodiac's holding facility, Beyond and Cheadle continue their tense exchange. Kanzai, struggling to keep up with the conversation's complexity, asks for an explanation. Sako offers a succinct summary. Beyond is proposing to make the King of Kakin a legendary historical figure in exchange for passage to the Dark Continent. Then, in a stunning declaration, Beyond formally announces war against the Zodiacs. Without hesitation, Cheryl accepts his challenge and instructs Mizaistum to contact the V5. The decision is made. The Zodiacs will journey to the Dark Continent alongside Beyond, though under strict conditions. When Kanzai expresses further confusion, Goodleil clarifies the plan. Beyond will be transported to the Dark Continent in captivity. Once there, he will be released, but kept under close surveillance, allowing him to reunite with his allies under controlled circumstances. Sacho volunteers to personally oversee Beyond's movements, and Beyond, unfazed, agrees to the arrangement. Earlier, Steiner had expressed skepticism about Journey to the New World, questioning whether it was merely the work of an over-imaginative writer. The IPA director had only responded with a knowing laugh. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a grand unveiling takes place. The Black Whale, a colossal transport ship designed to carry 200,000 people, is introduced to the public. It is announced that King Nasubihui Gworu has grand ambitions. In the coming years, he plans to dispatch 1 million ships to the Dark Continent. The media buzzes with speculation, reporting that the maiden voyage will carry not only beyond Nidero, but also King Hui Guo Rao and his 14 princes. Additionally, experts begin discussing a comprehensive bestiary detailing the known creatures of the Dark Continent. At the same time, deep within Beyond's expedition headquarters, Jin Freaks arrives unannounced and confronts Periston Hill. Jin wastes no time cutting to the heart of the matter. If the government refuses to acknowledge Beyond's provocation and send him to the Dark Continent, Periston intends to unleash 5,000 Chimera to force their hand. Jin, however, refuses to let Periston dictate the course of events any longer. Periston, ever composed, assumes that Jin is there to join his cause. But Jin smirks and corrects him. He has no intention of playing by Periston's rules. Instead, he declares he wants to play by himself. Cheadle contacts Leorio via phone, extending an invitation for him to join the Zodiacs. She acknowledges his rising prominence within the organization and emphasizes the impact he has made. When Leorio hesitates, implying he may decline, Cheadle sweetens the offer by revealing that a prestigious medical research opportunity awaits him, one where she herself will serve as the head medical professor. Just as Leorio prepares to refuse, he pauses and inquires if there is room for one more member in the Zodiacs, hinting that he has someone in mind. Meanwhile, within the stronghold of Beyond Netero's Dark Continent expedition team, Periston muses on the upcoming Hunter exam, remarking that Jin is surely aware of the Chimera ants. He speculates that Chandel may attempt to separate the exam from the association, a move he strongly opposes. When Jin questions why Periston seeks to undermine the Hunter Association despite his evident attachment to it, Periston deflects, challenging Jin to prove his claims by explaining his motives. Jin surmises that Periston is driven by a thirst for amusement, with his most efficient path to entertainment being the global dispersal of Chimera ants and the opening of previously restricted routes to the Dark Continent. He predicts that Periston's subordinates will easily pass the Hunter exam and infiltrate the organization, but admits he fails to see the direct link between the Chimera ants and the association. Jin ultimately asserts that he and Periston share a common desire for uncharted paths, though he insults Periston in the process. Periston's usual grin fades as he acknowledges Jin's accuracy. He reflects that while most people find joy in love and companionship, he derives pleasure from being despised and harming what he cherishes. He wonders if this is truly abnormal, to which Jin bluntly responds that Periston is far from ordinary and insists that, in this respect, they are fundamentally different. As Curly attempts to interject, Jin dismisses him, leaving him disheartened. Usamen then rises in anger, threatening Jin, but before he can act, Jin effortlessly lifts him, prompting Usamen to vividly imagine the brutal force of Jin's punches crushing his face. Jin orders him to back down and shifts his focus to a robotic girl in the corner, questioning whether she holds the highest rank among them. Before she can respond, Periston interjects, identifying himself as the team's second in command. Jin, surprised that rankings are not based on strength, releases Usamen. When Periston protests that he is being underestimated, Jin asserts that if they fought, he would ultimately kill Periston. Yet Periston would continue to laugh unless his very spirit was broken. Jin boldly declares himself the new number 2 and dares anyone to challenge his claim. Elsewhere, Mizaistam Nana embarks on a mission to locate Kurapika. Linson informs him that Kurapika is currently unavailable, but Mizaistam insists on waiting. Before long, 3 men attempt to block his path. In response, he brandishes a warning card, a likely manifestation of his Nen ability, Cross Game, which restricts their movements and renders them unable to attack. Taking a seat in the corner, he patiently observes as the men remain immobilized. Eventually, the bartender discloses that Kurapika is in the basement, but before Mizaistam can proceed, Kurapika himself emerges. Introducing himself as a representative of the Hunter Association, Mizaistam broaches the topic of the Dark Continent expedition and extends an invitation for Kurapika to join the Zodiacs, an offer made at Leorio's behest. Kurapika immediately declines, stating that he has other priorities. However, Mizaistam suddenly mentions the Scarlet Eyes, triggering Kurapika's anger and prompting him to issue a sharp warning to choose his words carefully. Mizaistam then reveals a shocking piece of information. A powerful individual in the Dark Continent possesses multiple sets of Scarlet Eyes, one that Kurapika has thus far failed to track. Leveraging the vast resources of the Hunters, the association has identified the owner. As Kurapika contemplates the revelation, Mizaistum hands him an image of the person in question, the fourth prince of the Kakin Empire, Tseridnich Hui Guo. Kurapika reflects on how he came to possess the Scarlet Eyes currently in his collection, recalling the struggles and sacrifices involved in retrieving them. Meanwhile, within Beyond Nitero's Dark Continent expedition team, skepticism lingers regarding Jin's sudden rise as second-in-command. Unwilling to accept his authority, two members challenge him to a fight. However, rather than engaging, Jin takes an unconventional approach. He offers them money, pledging to double the salary Beyond pays them. One of the team members, intrigued, provides Jin with his account number. Moments later, after confirming the transfer, the member promptly exits the lair, seemingly satisfied. Jin then turns to Periston, asking if he has any objections. Periston merely smiles, offering no resistance. At the Hunter Association headquarters, Leorio establishes contact with Kurapika, who is traveling by car alongside Mizaihanistum. Concerned, Kurapika inquires about Gon's well-being, to which Leorio reassures him that Gon is doing fine for the time being. Leorio then asks for Kurapika's email address, but Kurapika refuses to share it. Despite this, he expresses gratitude to Mizaiistum for providing information on Prince Tseridnich Huiguoru, though he admits that his abilities may be of little help against such a formidable opponent. Mizaiistum cautions Kurapika about the prince's sinister nature, advising him to tread carefully. Unfazed, Kurapika reassures him that he is no stranger to dealing with monsters disguised as men. Elsewhere, Gon attempts to reactivate his Nen, only to be met with an alarming discovery. His abilities are completely inaccessible. Back in Beyond Nitero's lair, Jin briefs 3 members of the expedition team on the 5 threats of the Dark Continent. He reveals that these entities surpass even the Chimera ants in strength, and humanity has yet to develop any means to counter them. He further discloses that victims of 2 of these threats, Akai and Pap, have already been found, and a possible 6th threat may soon resurface. Jin explains that the Hunter Association previously collaborated with Isaac Nitero on an earlier expedition to the Dark Continent. According to Nitero, the land is vast beyond comprehension, and during his journey, he was accompanied by Lean Horse Duver and Zig Zoldyck. To prevent Beyond Nitero from setting foot there, Isaac and the V5 placed an official ban on the region. The team member who had earlier received money from Jing unexpectedly returns. He reveals that he used the funds to pay for his younger sister's medical treatment at the hospital. Now seeing Jing in a different light, he acknowledges him as the expedition's new second-in-command. Curly, one of the team members, then questions Jin about the source of his extensive knowledge regarding the Dark Continent. Jin explains that only one individual has ever explored and documented the land, an adventurer who authored a book titled Journey to the New World over 300 years ago. He notes that the book was published in 2 versions, East and West, but only the East edition has been found. When Masher and another team member propose 2 possible reasons for the missing West edition, Jin provides a third, one that shifts their perspective entirely. He suggests that the book is still being written to this day. The true author, he reveals, is none other than Don Freaks. Gon calls his father, Jin, informing him that he is unable to manifest any aura. Jin, however, reassures him, explaining that his aura is likely still present. He simply can't perceive it. He goes on to tell Gon that he has essentially returned to normal and should consider himself fortunate, as the consequences of his previous actions could have been far worse. Rather than lamenting the loss, Jin advises Gon to view this as an opportunity to explore and search for something new. Taking his father's advice to heart, Gon returns to Whale Island, where he reunites with Miriyato and assists her with household chores. During dinner, Mito asks if he feels disheartened about not being able to accompany Jin. Gon responds candidly, admitting that even if he had gone, he likely would have only been a burden, something that would have been different if he could still use Nen. He then confesses that finding Jin was never about wanting to meet him as a father, rather it was a goal he set for himself. When Mito agrees that Jin lacks the qualities of a father, Gon acknowledges this but adds that, by the same measure, he himself never had the qualities of a son, an assertion Mito vehemently rejects. Gon laughs, assuring her that he was only joking. As he calms down, he gazes into his glass, revealing that he never wanted to stay with Jin simply because he was his father. Instead, he wanted to be near him because he could feel his strength and awe-inspiring presence firsthand. However, now that he has lost his Nen, that connection is gone. Mito lightheartedly sums up their conversation, reminding him that he's now stuck with her. She then leaves the room momentarily, only to return with 2 towering stacks of paperwork, informing Gon that these are the forms he must complete, causing him to recoil in exaggerated horror. Meanwhile, within Beyond Netero's Dark Continent expedition team, Jin is confronted by a team member who reports that the group has split into 2 factions, those who refuse to take Jin's money and those who are willing to accept it. He warns that such a division will only lead to chaos, and that not a single team member will follow Jin's orders. Instead, he insists that they act as mediators, as they were hired by Beyond, and that their loyalty lies with him, regardless of whether Jin chooses to look down on them for it. Another member, however, admits that even if they were to unite against Jin, they wouldn't stand a chance against him. Jin smirks, stating that they can't deceive him. He knows that every single one of them is a specialist. As Jin elaborates on why he believes Beyond's team members are all specialists, Periston silently reflects on how eerily similar Jin's thought process is to his own. For the first time, Periston experiences a genuine sense of hatred towards someone, prompting him to wonder what he should do about Jin. Elsewhere, in a dimly lit dance club, 2 young women receive an invitation to Prince Seridnich Huiguoru's hotel. Intrigued, they accept. Upon arrival, they marvel at the luxurious surroundings and ask the prince if he lives there alone. With a smile, Seridnich assures them that he never truly feels lonely, then encourages them to tell him about themselves. Later, Seridnich is seen reclining in a lavish bathtub, speaking on the phone with someone named Mark. He complains about the women's superficiality, expressing frustration over their lack of awareness about global affairs and their fixation on fashion. With cold indifference, he instructs Mark to send another pair. As the scene expands, the horrific truth is revealed. The bathroom is drenched in blood, confirming that the 2 women have been brutally murdered. It is evident that they were not his first victims. Back at the Hunter Association headquarters, Chattel receives direct orders from the IPA director to make Beyond sign a contract. The agreement states that if Beyond violates any rule, he will be sentenced to life in prison. Furthermore, if he does break the rules, she is to incite a riot, ensuring that the event is broadcasted worldwide. Chattel presents the contract to Beyond, who calmly reads through its conditions. Without hesitation, he signs it. Then, with a deliberate gesture, he presses the pen forcefully into the paper, causing it to remain lodged in place. Smirking, he cryptically remarks that there are only 3 things left: capacity, means, and contract. Meanwhile, in the car carrying Kurapika and Mizaistom, the conversation turns to the fate of Prince Seridnich Huiguoru after they retrieve the Scarlet Eyes. Mizaistom asks what they plan to do with the prince, to which Kurapika replies that he doesn't care. His only objective is reclaiming the eyes. Pressing further, Mizaistom questions what Kurapika will do if the prince resists. Kurapika, unfazed, recounts 2 past encounters where individuals initially claimed they would rather die than relinquish the Scarlet Eyes. In the end, however, neither of them perished. Both had a change of heart. Confidently, he states that the prince will be no different. Mizaistom, unconvinced, closes the conversation with a single remark: "I hope you're right." Kurapika and Mizaistom arrive at the Hunter Association headquarters, where they are welcomed by Leorio and Chadel. Chadel leads them to the meeting room, where the remaining Zodiacs are already gathered, and the discussion commences. She begins by informing the group that the V5 has officially expanded to the V6, with the Kakian Empire newly inducted as the 6th member due to recent developments. She further explains that despite repeated attempts, the V6 has consistently failed to penetrate the Dark Continent, primarily due to the formidable 5 threats. Notably, she reveals that the danger ranking of these threats has escalated from B to A, surpassing even that of the Chimera ants. Chattel then outlines their primary objective: to capture at least one of the 5 threats, ensure their survival on the return journey, and simultaneously address the challenge posed by Beyond. Opening the floor to questions, she is met with Kurapika raising his hand. Granted permission to speak, he directly inquires whether any of the Zodiacs have identified Beyond's allies within the association. He elaborates on his reasoning, emphasizing that since Beyond had anticipated his father's death, he must have strategized his involvement with the association well in advance. Kurapika also affirms the theory that Periston and the Temp Hunters are aligned with Beyond. Recognizing the potential ramifications of Kurapika's statements, Mizaistom discreetly escorts him outside. In private, he confides that both he and Chattel had arrived at the same conclusion regarding the presence of moles within the association. He urges Kurapika to refrain from raising the subject publicly, as doing so could alert the infiltrators. Kurapika acknowledges the concern and agrees to keep the matter confidential. Upon their return to the meeting, each Zodiac member outlines their respective roles in the impending Dark Continent expedition. A month later, Jin demonstrates a Nen-based trick known as Pip Play to the Dark Continent expedition team. As the team members attempt to replicate the technique, Curly challenges Jin to a vocabulary contest, testing their knowledge of ancient Kappa words beginning with N. Jin effortlessly secures victory, leading Curly to acknowledge him as number 2 and to part with a sum of money in the process. At that moment, Pariston appears unexpectedly, informing Jin that all the assassins deployed in the 289th Hunter exam had failed. He also acknowledges the impressive capabilities of Kurapika, who has taken his place among the Zodiacs. Shortly after, Manhwa arrives with 2 other Hunter exam participants, commenting on the rumors that Kurapika possesses the ability to read minds. When questioned about his early arrival, Manhwa dismisses the need to see the exam results, stating that he already knew he had failed. Turning his attention to Jin, he demands that he step aside, accusing him of siding with the Hunter Association. Jin corrects him, asserting that, in the pursuit of true freedom, he aligns more closely with Beyond than with the Association. However, he clarifies that his personal objective is to support Beyond while simultaneously countering Pariston. Manhwa remains skeptical, but Usomen interjects, affirming that Jin is not aligned with the Association. This revelation surprises Manhwa, who questions Usomen's stance. In response, Usomen advises him to give Jin a few days, assuring him that he will come to recognize Jin as the rightful number 2. At that moment, additional temp Hunter participants from the Hunter exam enter the scene. They declare that the identity of number 2 is irrelevant, as it will not alter the expedition's command structure. The expedition team gave Jin and Pariston 2 choices. Either Jin leaves the team, or Pariston does. However, both refused to accept these terms. Instead, Jin proposed a third option: the assassins will leave, while Pariston introduced a fourth: the assassins will die. Manhwa's henchmen unleash conjured firearms, firing aura-infused bullets at Jin and Pariston. The 2 swiftly evade the assault, retreating through an underground passage. Jin, irritated, remarks on their aggressor's bad temper, only for Pariston to wryly mock him for having one himself. Jin counters, explaining that his reputation stems from countless isolated incidents accumulating over time, before curtly telling Pariston to be quiet. He then reminds him that it was Pariston who provoked their pursuers in the first place. Amused, Pariston claims he was merely going with the flow, then speculates whether they need to eliminate their attackers, as they show no signs of relenting. Jin concurs, but insists they handle it gently. As he begins analyzing their opponent's abilities, Pariston inquires whether he can observe Jin in combat. Jin grants permission, preparing to unleash a technique. Pariston watches in astonishment as Jin flawlessly replicates Leorio's remote punch, incapacitating 3 enemies in an instant. Seeking confirmation, Pariston asks if his assumption is correct. Jin explains that he can mimic physical-type Nen abilities as long as he has experienced them firsthand. Deducing that Leorio's Nen ability likely stems from his medical aspirations, Jin theorizes that Leorio must have experimented with aura and tapping, refining his technique to function similarly to ultrasound, an approach that, Jin notes, is subtler than Nen. Demonstrating this insight, he applies the same method to scan for enemies beyond a wall. Visualizing it as a body with an unreachable tumor or blood clot, he concentrates his aura and fires 2 precise energy projectiles through the structure, effortlessly neutralizing the remaining henchmen. Utilizing the ultrasound-like ability once more, Jin confirms that no additional enemies remain. Pariston speculates that their adversaries have simply given up, but Jin disagrees, asserting that they should assume the mission has been successfully completed. He then reveals that he had known from the very beginning that the entire ordeal was orchestrated by Pariston. The biggest flaw in the act, he explains, was that the enraged Mohawk man never suggested the option of both Jin and Pariston walking away, an oversight that, had it been included, Jin admits he might have actually considered. He clarifies that he only went along with Pariston's charade out of sympathy for those forced to participate. However, if Pariston truly wants to witness his real abilities, he will have to challenge him directly. With that, Jin ascends the stairs, leaving Pariston behind, his gaze darkened with intrigue. Meanwhile, as the henchmen clear away the remnants of the wrecked furniture, Muir expresses his bewilderment at how their ruse was uncovered, convinced that his acting had been convincing. Jin, unimpressed, mocks him by mimicking one of his lines, further irritating the mercenary. However, rather than dwelling on Manhwa's performance, Jin advises him to be more concerned about his soldiers' lack of strength, declaring that they are nowhere near prepared to face the Dark Continent. At best, he suggests, they are fit only as backup reserves. Taking a measured sip of his drink, Muir responds coolly, confirming that Jin's assessment is correct. The soldiers themselves acknowledge their limited roles: reconnaissance, artillery support, and sniper covering fire. The real combat, they reveal, will be left to Golem. Recognizing Golem as a symbiotic-type Nen user, Jin voices his observation, and Muir confirms it. Golem operates by conjuring a formidable heavy weapon, which is then manned by an emitter who generates the bullets. This synergy not only amplifies the weapon's power, but also enhances the bullet's effectiveness beyond what they could achieve independently. Jin quickly deduces that Golem was also responsible for providing the conjured firearms to the henchmen, and commends the ingenuity of the strategy. Muir elaborates, explaining that in prolonged group warfare, using real firearms loaded with Nen bullets drastically improves battlefield efficiency. He further reveals that Golem, along with 10 other elite soldiers specializing in assault and reconnaissance, forms the legendary Stonewall Squad, a unit that emerged from the brutal Lubo Civil War without a single casualty. Intrigued, Jin expresses admiration for Golem's abilities and inquires about its real name. However, a distorted voice responds that Golem is the only name it is known by among its comrades, making it clear that further questions will go unanswered. Muir adds that despite knowing Golem for over 3 years, he remains completely unaware of the individual operating it. Jin, unsurprised, remarks that he had already sensed Golem's "don't talk to me" aura. Shifting to business, Jin requests that Muir persuade Beyond's faction members to accept his financial support, since Muir oversees all divisions. However, the mercenary refuses, admitting he had no issue with Jin assuming the role of number 2 until he offered them money. He explains that for soldiers, mutual trust is paramount. Even the slightest suspicion that some could be bought would lead to alienation within the ranks. Jin's casual distribution of wealth, as if it carried no weight, deeply offended him. He likens the situation to the predetermined title of a book, or the fixed placement of a remote on a table. Certain things are decided by merit, and attempting to alter them carelessly only creates disruption. The impact was so severe that many even considered leaving. Demanding an explanation, Muir presses Jin to justify his actions. However, Jin finds himself unable to do so. All he can offer is an apology. Acknowledging that he cannot reclaim the money already accepted, he instead proposes a resolution, redirecting the funds toward donations to the Norwell Fund, a foundation supporting the families of fallen soldiers. Muir, taken aback, asks if Jin is truly serious. After all, by opening a grandchild account, he would place himself under the authority of the grandfather account, making it impossible to refuse future requests. Jin, however, remains resolute. He argues that it's for the best, as it not only demonstrates his commitment, but also prevents any strange rumors from spreading. Curious, Muir presses further, questioning why Jin is so intent on giving them his money. Jin pauses, before admitting that he isn't entirely sure himself. He often finds himself in situations where he talks at length, only to later wonder why he did so. However, upon reflection, he believes the core reason is that he recognizes the expedition members as people who cannot simply be bought. If they were willing to accept his money, it would mean they had also accepted him. Perhaps, he muses, it was also because he felt a certain kinship, realizing there were other fools like him out there. Jin then confesses that he originally planned to venture into the Dark Continent alone. However, Beyond's expedition had drawn too much attention, making a solo journey impossible. At first, he was furious, but he also acknowledged that Beyond had pursued the challenge before him. When he arrived at Beyond's base, his emotions were still unresolved. He hadn't come with a clear plan, but rather to vent his frustrations. He doesn't even remember how the conversation about money started in the first place. Seeking another perspective, Muir turns to Masher for his opinion. Masher reveals that he had confronted Jin directly while he was arguing with Peristan. Initially, he had dismissed Jin as nothing more than a troublemaker, someone who wore a provocative facade and had a penchant for manipulating others. However, during the discussion, he overheard the former Zodiac speaking about Isaac Netero and Jin's true feelings toward the Dark Continent. That revelation changed his perception, allowing him to forgive Jin. Masher and Marione had been fully prepared to engage in combat if the situation escalated. However, since their priority was conflict resolution rather than confrontation, they acknowledged that Jin's approach, despite its chaotic nature, had undeniable merit. Still perplexed by how this all ties back to the money, Muir presses Jin for clarification. Jin, somewhat sheepishly, admits that he was simply trying to play it cool. When he first made the offer, he hadn't anticipated the uproar it would cause. He reiterates that, despite his complicated relationship with Periston, he isn't plotting anything sinister. His only goals are to thwart Periston's schemes and support Beyond's mission. He then earnestly pleads once more for them to accept his money, emphasizing that while it is a gift, there is also a degree of self-interest involved. At that moment, Golem interjects, questioning why Muir hadn't informed them of this sooner. The mercenary responds awkwardly, explaining that in order to restore order, he needed Jin to first acknowledge his own shame. I am effing. He then urges Golem to try and understand his reasoning, but Golem remains unmoved. Jin, witnessing their exchange, can't help but feel that this too is somehow his fault. Ultimately, Muir agrees to accept Jin's offer under the condition that the funds be directed to the Norwell Foundation. However, in return, despite Jin officially being number 2 in the operation, Muir will retain full authority on the battlefield. His commands will be absolute. Jin, unfazed, accepts the terms with a playful salute, responding in a mock military fashion. Sir. Yes, sir. With that, the matter is finally settled. Muir then turns to Periston, asking if those returning to base will accept Jin. Periston confirms that they will. He then informs Jin that, since their infiltration attempt has failed, he is now free to send his money to the designated list of contacts he is transmitting to him. With a sly smile, he also congratulates Jin on securing his new position. Jin, however, downplays his authority, insisting that his role is purely nominal and that he is perfectly happy to let Periston take the lead, as always. But Periston, to Jin's surprise, declines. He wants to see how Jin will handle things. Jin smirks in response, his competitive spirit ignited. Then I won't hold back. The episode ends here. The next part is coming in just 3 days, so make sure to subscribe to Rage and Manga for your best dose of manga and manhwa videos. Stay tuned!